Hey, what's going on guys? Tanmay, and in this video tutorial we're going to be starting off with a little bit of DOM manipulations, and we're also going to see the method getElementById in more detail. So in the previous couple of videos of this JavaScript playlist, we've been going through a lot of fundamentals. So we know what are functions, we've seen data types, we've seen objects, we've seen what is DOM, that is document object model, and how JavaScript can manipulate the DOM. But then we've never really actually used JavaScript to actually manipulate some DOM objects on the HTML document. So in this video, we are going to be actually starting off with a little bit of DOM manipulations, and as we move ahead, these manipulations will increase and be a little bit more and more complicated. So we'll also see a lot of HTML code and then JavaScript that will manipulate that HTML code. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to be adding functionality to our web page. So as you can see on the screen, I have a little bit of HTML code, and this time in the body tag, I have a button and the text is click me. So you can see it over here in the output on the right hand side. And then I also have a heading which says some random text, and I've given it an ID of heading 2. Now if you've seen the DOM, that is the document object model video in this playlist, you have an idea of how JavaScript manipulates the HTML objects, that is the document objects on the web page on the client side. So if you don't know what is document object model, I would recommend that you check that video. And essentially what JavaScript does is it adds a little bit of functionality on the client side to make the website more interactive, right? So using HTML and CSS, you can make a very static website. However, it will not perform any activities on the client side. So it has to be either backed with some backend language, that is any server-side scripting language like ASP or PHP, or you can also perform some functionalities using JavaScript on the client side, on the front end. So that's where, for example, you want to perform certain validations. So you have some text box and you want only numbers to go into it, or you don't want them blank, or you want to perform some actions on some click events, then you can use JavaScript. So when you're talking about HTML document which is loaded onto the browser, there are a lot of events that are happening. So event is basically an activity. Let's say I am clicking this button. So this is an event. Okay, so you can have many standard events. So we have a lot of standard events in HTML like click events, scrolling events. Let's say you are changing focus from one text box to another text box. You're dragging some text, you're selecting something, you're double clicking on it, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of standard events. I'll try to list some of them in the video description if you want. But then what happens is these events can be mapped into the JavaScript, and we can target these particular events to perform certain actions. So in very basic, let's say you want to perform something when you click this button. So right now if I'm trying to click it, nothing is happening. And also, by the way, I've zoomed in on the Chrome browser. The actual size is something like this, but then it will be very small in the video, right? So that's why I've just zoomed in a little bit. But yeah, what we want to do is when we click on this, we want to show an alert message. So we need to actually map this event, right? So whenever we are clicking on this, something in the code, that is something in the JavaScript, has to register this, and we have to perform some action onto it, right? So this is where the DOM manipulations come into picture. So let's go ahead and add some functionality on this button. So in the HTML tag, we have this button, and as I mentioned, we have some standard events which are related to HTML tags. So one of them is on click. So if I just type on, and you can see that there are n number of events actually. These are all events that are showing up, and we want the on click one. So I'm just going to click on it, and there you go, the code is already generated for us. So the way we map these events to JavaScript is by using functions. Now we've already seen what are functions, right? Functions are a set of statements that perform a particular task, and you can call them, right? So you define a function and then you call it. So let's first actually define a function. So I'm going to say function button click. Okay, so this is the name of the function, opening and closing round brackets, and the body. So this is something that I'm doing in the script tag. Okay, so I'm just defining a function, and I'm going to say alert, which shows a pop-up message. You'll see that in a minute. We've actually used it in the previous videos also. So this alert is a predefined method or function, and in the double quotes, I'm just going to say button clicked. Okay, I'm just going to save this, and you can see that I'm not really calling this anywhere as of now. So if I just call this over here, you can see immediately in the output we are getting button click, but we don't want this, right? We are not wanting to call it immediately. We want to call this method when the button is actually clicked. So again, coming back to this event of the button tag, so what we do is we just write the function name over here. So we say button click and opening and closing round brackets of the function. So now what we just did is we registered this onClick event to call this JavaScript function, and we've defined our function over here. So whenever I try to click on this, so if I click now, you can see button clicked. So we're getting that message. So what we just did in a very simple way is we added functionality to this button, right? We made it do something when we wanted it to do it. So essentially this is something that we are going to be doing a lot in the further videos, wherein we are going to be mapping certain events to certain functions, and we are going to be performing certain activities what we want. Let's say you want to perform validations, let's say you want to perform animations, you want to perform or you want to change the CSS styling of some text, you want to change the text, and so on and so forth. So this was just the mapping of events. Now just let's talk about the getElementById method. Now let's say you want to perform something else on this button click. You don't want to show this alert, but what you want to do is you want to change this text and type in something else, right? Let's say you want to type in Telesco learnings, but this should happen only on this click. So the button click event is going to be the same. However, the function code, that is the statements inside the function, has to be different, right? So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to say document. Now document is a predefined object. If you've seen the document object model, you know that the document object represents the entire document that is loaded into the browser. That is the HTML document. And using this document object, we can access certain predefined methods and functions. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to say document dot, I'm going to say getElementById. So what this method does is, you can actually read the definition also, returns a reference to the first object with the specified value of the ID or the name attribute. So I'm just going to hit enter and opening and closing round brackets, and inside this round brackets what I'm going to pass is I'm going to pass the ID of this h2 tag. So this h2 tag has this unique ID heading 2. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this and going to paste it over here. So essentially what we're doing is we are trying to fetch that element on the web page whose ID is heading 2. So using the document object, we are trying to identify which tag or which element has this heading 2 ID. So we know that h2 tag has this, right? Now when I access this, so basically we are getting a reference, right? So you can see by the definition also returns the reference of the element which has this particular ID or name. Right now it is ID. Now once I get the reference of this h2 tag, because h2 tag is represented as an object in the document object model, I can say dot and then I can say inner HTML. So inner HTML is a property of the h2 DOM object, because this h2 tag is represented as an object, right? So JavaScript sees it as an object. So objects has properties. That's what we saw in the objects video. So inner HTML is a predefined property of this h2 tag, of this basically element that we just found out. And this inner HTML property is actually the text which the tag holds. Okay. So if I say equal to, and if I change the text to Telesco learnings, so what we did over here is we accessed this tag using the ID and we changed its property, that is inner HTML, that is the text inside the tag, to Telesco learnings. However, as of now you cannot see it because this will only happen on the button click. So let's try to change it, and there you go. You can see as I clicked it, the text got changed to Telesco learnings. So this was the document.getElementById. You can perform a lot of things with the getElementById. You can actually get this and store it in another variable. So I can say var x is equal to, and what I'm doing is I'm storing the inner HTML, which is some random text, in our own very own variable. So this is a new variable. If I say str, so this is a string variable which will store string value, because .inner HTML is going to return a string and it is going to return some random text which will be stored in our str. So if you want, I can also show it to you in this alert. So if I say str over here, and if I click on this button, because this function is always going to be called only when we click this button, right? Because that's where it is called over here. This is how the mapping is done. So if I click on this, you can see in the alert it says some random text. So this text was accessed over here using the document.getElementById .inner HTML property, and it was stored in our str variable, and we just popped it up in the alert message. So this is how you can do multiple things by accessing different tags on the HTML using the getElementById. So this is just one way of accessing it. There are many other ways in which we can access elements, and soon we'll see more of them. I just wanted to give you an introduction of how we are going to be performing some manipulations in the HTML website or in the HTML document. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. I hope you understood this DOM manipulation video. This was very basics, and we'll see more and we'll add on a lot of things as we move ahead in this series. So thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video. Peace.